NPR acknowledges that we were mistaken in failing to cover the Hunter Biden laptop story more aggressively and sooner.
Whoops, who would have seen that coming? All right, we are going to cover some stuff. It's been a while since we've done a full episode. We've been focusing a little bit on our short videos because it has been busy around here lately. But I appreciate you coming and stopping, checking out another episode. We have some big things to cover. Like I said, we are going to cover the leaks of the attack on the Houthis. We're going to cover the hearing in Congress about NPR and PBS, really focusing on the person in charge of NPR because her bias is unbelievable. And the fact that she really doesn't even accept it, that she's so biased and that her organization is biased. We are also going to get into some more stuff with Doge, and we are going to cover the relations with Canada and maybe a few other things. We'll see. We got a lot of clips to inject here, so stay tuned and let's get into it. Don't forget to like, subscribe, share with a friend, and comment below. Let's go. So the first story we're going to get started with is this controversy over the federal government's use of the Signal app. And there were some group security officials, federal government officials within the Trump administration that were using the Signal Act to have a conversation about a surprise attack that was going to occur on the Houthi terrorist group. And they were just sharing some information about what the attack was. It wasn't really, after it was all fleshed out, it really didn't seem like it was classified information. Definitely was information you wouldn't want the Houthis have got a hold of before the attack was, started. But it really wasn't the big deal that the left made it out to be, as usual. One of some reporter was included in this chat group by accident. It really seemed to be an accident by probably a staff member, and like I said, it was no real big deal. But this is a Fox News report talking about that incident.
What matters here is that the president of the United States has confidence in his national security team. This is a very experienced national security team. This is a team, again, that from day one, when you look at what was the president's day two action, and that was to reverse what the Biden administration did, which is to take the Houthis off of the foreign terrorist organization list, and the Trump administration, day two, we put them back on. What did we immediately do in the first few weeks of the Trump administration? We put Iran on notice. We put Iran back in the max pressure economic campaign policy. So this is a team, listen, we were handed dumpsters on fire by the Biden administration. We have hot wars around the world. We have chaos that we inherited around the world. So what did we have to do? We had to come in and we had to restore global order. Part of restoring global order is taking on the Houthis, because we have allowed something your audience should know. This is something that is unprecedented in modern history. After 9/11, we said that we would never allow a terrorist organization to do what the Biden administration allowed the Houthis to do.
And she made some great points there, talking about the promises that the American public has made, or the American government has made to the American public, saying that we would never let terrorists attack us on our soil again. And the failures of the Biden administration have allowed so many terrorists to come in flooding across our borders. They have just caught another member of the MS-13. I think he was actually one of the top officials, if you can call them officials, in a gang. But he was just caught in the United States, actually in Washington, D.C. So we've seen a bunch of opportunities for terrorist attacks within the United States. Thank God that it hasn't, we really haven't seen anything significant to this point. And we have Tom Homan to thank, and we'll have a clip of him talking about securing the United States in a little bit. But here is Pete Hegseth also addressing those leaks that went through the Signal app.
Information about war plans against the Houthis in Yemen was shared with a journalist in The Atlantic, and were those details classified?
You're talking about a deceitful and highly discredited so-called journalist who's made a profession of peddling hoaxes time and time again, to include the hoaxes of Russia, 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 or the fine people on both sides hoax, or suckers and losers hoax. So this is the guy that peddles in garbage. This is what he does. I would love to comment on the Houthi campaign because of the skill and courage of our troops. I've monitored it very closely from the beginning. And you see, we've been managing 4 years of deferred maintenance under the Trump administration. Our troops, our sailors were getting shot at as targets. Our ships couldn't sail through. And when they did shoot back, it was purely defensively or at shacks in Yemen. President Trump said, no more. We will reestablish deterrence. We will open freedom of navigation, and we will ultimately decimate the Houthis, which is exactly what we're doing as we speak from the beginning, overwhelmingly.
Why were those details shared on Signal, and how did you learn that a journalist was privy to the targets, the types of weapons used?
I've heard I was characterized. Nobody was texting war plans, and that's all I have to say about that.
Right,
Thank you. Appreciate it.
That's it.
The NSC said it was authentic.
So this reporter, Jeff Goldberg, he was working for The Atlantic. He's actually their editor, and he was inadvertently added to this text group. Seems like he was maybe on this group for multiple days before this chat even started. He never made any mention to anybody that he might have been inadvertently added to a text group that might contain vital information to the country's security. And he claimed that he wasn't going to release this information, probably because he knew that once he released it, it was going to be not as big of a deal as he claimed it was. He ended up then releasing it all, and we were pretty much right. It wasn't as big of a deal as he claimed it was. Now, like I said, if the Houthis had been on this group instead of a no-name editor at the Atlantic that nobody really reads, then it could have been a big deal. But obviously the mission was successful. There was no downplay or detriment to the mission at all. And it was a big nothing burger, as usual, as we're kind of used to with the lamestream media these days. Now, Kristi Noem was, not Kristi Noem, Tulsi Gabbard, the National Security Intelligence Director. She was also being questioned on the Hill, and this is what she had to say about it.
Contact the Defense Secretary or others after this specific military planning was put out and say, hey, we should be doing this in a skiff?
There was no classified material that was shared in that.
So then
Signal
if there was no
chat.
classified material, share it with the committee.
So she states that no classified material was shared on this conversation as well, which we can now see is true. Now, also Kash Patel. So there was already a pre-planned investigation hearing, congressional hearing planned for, national security conversations before this actually happened. So it basically turned this whole hearing into a conversation on this Signal app controversy. So Kash Patel was on the Hill being questioned as well. And this Chrissy Houlihan was asking him if the FBI was going to investigate this as well. He's basically just going to tell her that he's not going to comment on something. It's an ongoing investigation. She tries to force him to answer in a way that she wants, or take a non-answer as the answer she thinks that is best in her favor. And, she wants to talk about filibustering. She's trying to filibuster here and basically turn the whole conversation into a non-question. It's been a really, really bad trajectory of these congressional hearings to do this, where they, instead of actually asking honest questions, looking for an honest answer, they're really just looking to, stand at a pulpit and make a speech and input or inject what they think the answer should be or was in their best interest, instead of actually getting an honest answer, which makes these hearings basically useless, but at least gives the American public a chance to hear firsthand from some of these appointees what's going on. Here's that.
Another day has passed. Do you
Well, actually, it was the night before the hearing.
now that another day has passed, do you believe that it's now time potentially for the FBI to open an investigation into this?
I'm not going to comment on that.
Because you're the director of the FBI, you don't believe it's appropriate to comment on that?
Because there's a process in place, there's an ongoing litigation, and the National Security Council is reviewing this matter. And I'm not going to discuss any open or closed investigation.
That ongoing investigation, literally, the lawsuit happened today or yesterday afternoon, and the idea that you don't have an opinion on this at this point is frustrating to me.
No, it's not. I'm not going to prejudge any matters, and the men and women of the FBI will call the balls and strikes.
Reclaiming my time,
not
sir.
you.
Sir, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to have...
Gentlewoman's recognized. You have
Thank
4
you.
seconds remaining.
No, I have more than
You have
that
2
because
seconds
Mr.
remaining.
Patel would not add...
Gentlewoman's time has expired. Mr. Stubbe.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Director Gabbard, were there any sources?
And Kash Patel hits it big at the end where he says, I call the balls and strikes, not you. He is accurate. He has way more pull than this Congresswoman does. She sounds like a lunatic to begin with. I don't know how these people keep getting elected to these positions of Congress, but they are unhinged. They are dishonest brokers. So the last clip we have on this is Donald Trump being asked about it and saying that basically it's a no big deal. It's no big deal. This is being made into something that's not, like the leftist lamestream media likes to do, and that he stands behind his team. And I think that that's a clear winning message. I think if Donald Trump sticks with this message and is consistent with it, and the group sticks together and doesn't throw anybody else under the bus, they will come out ahead on this one, just as they usually do. I think that we've seen a trend throughout, especially with Donald Trump. He's able to pull this off better than anybody. But it seems like if you're able to flip the script, pretend like something's, or play off something like it's no big deal, which I don't think this resulted in anything huge, so it's being made into something that it's not. But if you can move on to the next thing and just brush it off your shoulder and have everybody stick together with a consistent message, you will get through it and you will come out ahead in the end. And that is what Donald Trump does here, and I think it will work.
So what's your response to Republican lawmakers who have said today that your administration should take more accountability and not downplay what's happened with Signal that we've seen in these messages today?
Well, I don't know about downplaying. The press upplays it. I think it's all a witch hunt. That's all. I think it's a witch hunt. I wasn't involved with it. I wasn't there, but I can tell you the result is unbelievable because the Houthis are looking to do something. They want to know, how do we stop? Can we have peace? The Houthis want peace because they're getting the hell knocked out of them. It's been very, very strong. The Houthis are dying for peace. They don't want this. And they're bad. Look, they were knocking ships out of the ocean. You know, we had in the Suez Canal, they only have about 20% of the ships going through. They have to go through a different way, which takes weeks of travel. And that really affects commerce. But the Houthis have been hit hard and they want to negotiate peace.
Like he said, not as big of a deal as the leftist media wants you to believe. They are trying to whip the left and their followers, their watcher. People still watch this junk, this garbage that they put out with all the mistrust, which we'll get into that too. But anybody who's following this stuff, they're trying to whip them up into a frenzy to try to get emotion into this, which is their best their best method of trying to get, everything twisted into a ball instead of telling you facts and truth like they would if they were honest brokers. And speaking of, Tom Homan with the border security, he had a clip on today that I just thought was awesome. This guy is one of my favorite people in the Trump administration. He is like a mob boss, but he is on the good guy's side, which is perfect, and we love it. And here he's talking about some of the work they're doing on the border and how he's like a kid in a candy shop at the end. Is great.
I think it's going to open up a lot of eyes. I think illegal aliens, the most vulnerable, are not going to spend their life savings to hand it to a criminal cartel to come to the United States, knowing we ended catch and release. You're not going to be released in the United States. You're going to be deported immediately. And as the Secretary said, we got a lot of tools in the toolbox. El Salvador prison's one. We got Gitmo. We got other countries. So for those countries who push back on taking their criminal nationals back, we'll send them to another country. We got a lot of tools in this toolbox. Again, President Trump's a game changer. We got illegal immigration on board down 96% because of the policies of the Trump administration. And we got, like I say, record number of criminals. We still got a lot more to do in the interior, but we got the right team put together. This is the greatest team I've seen in my over 40 years serving as a special agent, a border patrol agent. I've never seen a team this serious about making this country safe. We got a great president. He's got a grey team. So I wake up every day like a kid in the candy shop, getting ready to go to work. And I know we're making a difference every day.
And you can see there why I love that guy so much. He is just super confident in the work that he's doing. He is clearly capable. He is a guy that I would not stand up to in a boxing ring, even though he is probably at least a third older than I am, probably a little bit more than that. But I still would not stand up to him in a boxing ring because, man, I bet he's got a wicked left hook. But speaking of border security, there are now activist judges, and this happened in Trump's last term too, in 2016 to 2020, where anytime he tried to do something, a district court judge was trying to stop him and issue an injunction or another order, to like a restraining order or some other order that was trying to stop what Trump was doing for the entire country. So you'd have a DC district judge trying to stop, for example, the building of the border wall, right? And we saw this with a plane that was on its way out of the country and taking a bunch of Venezuelan gang members. And he was trying to make a turn back around. Luckily, that plane was already over international waters and it was too late to turn back. But there were some that were still on the tarmac that did not leave and haven't been able to leave since with these Venezuelan gang members. So now they're trying to pull it back. There's a couple bills in Congress right now. I don't think they'll go anywhere because there's not enough of a Republican majority in order to make these things pass without some Democrat help. And I do not see them willing to do that. However, there are some bills anyways to at least you can get names on paper to say who is for this stuff and who is against it. One bill would be to make so district judges can't make orders that would affect the entire country. Ultimately, I think that's going to fall to the Supreme Court to make that ruling, but whether there's an appetite there or not, I'm not sure. It seems like Amy Coney Barrett is definitely not the far right judge that everybody said she was, or the lefties said she was. She has, voted with the left more than we expected, which is unfortunate. However, there's another bill that would basically make like a rotating judge list, where if you were going to, bring something to the court's attention, you would not be able to judge shop. So not take it to a certain district in the country where you knew you were going to get favorable rulings. You would instead bring this to a panel. They would basically pick from a rotating list of district court judges, and then you would just get whoever came up on the list randomly, which would make it so it would be harder to pick and choose which judge you think you're going to get by going to a specific district. So either one of those would help with this process. Here's a report on those activist judges.
Joining me now, Utah Senator Mike Lee, also former Supreme Court clerk of the Senate Judiciary Committee, Senator Elena Kagan. She's a principled liberal. She's obviously right. This is a disaster.
Absolutely right. She's the one who said we're all textualists now. She's a textualist, and she was right when she said that.
So what do we do now in the Senate? There are a couple of different ideas. Explain them clearly to the people watching tonight, because they think, well, you can't stop a court. A court wants to rule. All right. Why isn't that okay?
One of the best things we could do is pass legislation that I introduced day before yesterday that would limit the jurisdiction of the courts. making it so that a single district judge can't issue an injunction against the U.S. government with nationwide applicability on a major matter of presidential policy. It needs to be going through a 3-judge district court with an automatic direct appeal to the Supreme Court of the United States. It'd make it very difficult to judge shop, and it would make it so we get a final resolution from the Supreme Court.
Would this be a rotating panel of district court judges?
Rotating panel of district court judges selected by the Chief Justice at random from available district judges around the country. That way you can't go into this. If you're an NGO, if you're one of these liberal activist groups, you can't just judge shop and know that if you file in a certain district, odds are pretty good you're going to get a lefty.
And he goes on to point out that actually the same D.C. district judge that was assigned to the case with the Venezuelan gang members has also been assigned to a case involving the Signal controversy with the Department of Defense and others regarding that Houthi airstrike. So again, they've been shopping for the judge that they want for every specific thing. And eventually this is going to have to be addressed. This has been a long-standing problem, really, for both sides, but has clearly been weaponized against Donald Trump and the right way more often, which is just despicable. So let's talk about the relationship between the United States and Canada. You have Doug Ford there now trying to say that he's going to inflict as much pain on the United States as possible. Here's that clip.
But I can assure you one thing. We're going to make sure that we inflict as much pain as possible to the American people without inflicting pain on the Canadian population.
Of course, we've heard Doug talk tough before. He said things, like he was going to raise tariffs on energy coming to the United States, and then he quickly backed off that. So I would not be surprised if this is all talk as well. Now, we also have the current Prime Minister of Canada, Mark Carney, and he is also attacking the United States, saying that Canada is going to try to become more independent of the United States and, kind of cut itself off from our economy. Now, all I have to say to that is good luck. You guys have been riding on our shirt tails up until now for many years, and now you think you're going to be okay on your own? I want to see it.
The old relationship we had with the United States, based on deepening integration of our economies and tight security and military cooperation, is over. What exactly the United States does next is unclear. But what is clear is that we, as Canadians, have agency. We have power. We are masters in our own home. Nous sommes maîtres chez nous. We can control our destiny. We can give ourselves much more than any foreign government, including the United States, can ever take away. We can deal with this crisis best by building our strength right here at home. It will take hard work. It will take steady and focused determination from governments, from businesses, from labor, from Canadians. We will need to dramatically reduce our reliance on the United States. We will need to pivot our trade relationships elsewhere. And we will need to do things previously thought impossible at speeds we haven't seen in generations.
Well, I hate to tell you this, Mark, but the reason why you thought those things weren't possible and the reason why you didn't accomplish things at the speed that you never have before is because your economy is not set up for that. You do not have free trade. You do not have free business like we do in the United States. We have, it's not as free as it should be, a more free economic structure than they do in Canada, which allows more flexibility and a faster adjustment to the market trends. And, anybody who's read some Thomas Sowell, if you haven't read Thomas Sowell, you should. He is a brilliant economist, and he makes a lot of good points about the free market and the benefits of it, the structure, how it can respond quickly to market trends, the needs and wants of the consumer. And, it's really quite a simple concept, but he explains it in a way that is excellent. And that's something that Canada and a lot of the other countries in the world have not really realized, and they are behind because of it. And they think that they can, all of a sudden transition and become more independent without using this type of market structure. And I think that's going to lead them to a quick downward path in which they'll end up being more dependent on the American economy than they were even before. And I believe that Donald Trump realizes this, and he's playing the long game, knowing that if the economy is good in 2028 or towards the end of his term, that is what the American people will remember. They will not remember any turmoil that is created right now. And I think it is very smart to take advantage of the short-term memory of the American public and make the difficult decisions now versus suffering long-term. So speaking of the American economy, of course, we have Elon Musk working with Doge as an advisor to the president, and he has made some great discoveries so far, really opening up the books. This is what the American people have wanted. We all knew this stuff existed. We just didn't know how to find it. And he is doing the people's work in finding this stuff and opening it up to the public. He is talking about how they are trying to save $1 trillion from the budget, and that they regularly, get this, they routinely find $1 billion of waste, just like it's nothing. It's like, if you go put an old pair of pants on, pull something out of the laundry, and there's a $20 bill in there and you're excited. He's doing that, but it's $1 billion in the laundry, not a 20.
Budgetary savings goals, and how much do you think you've achieved so far?
Our goal is to reduce the deficit by $1 trillion. So from a nominal deficit of $2 trillion to try to cut the deficit in half to $1 trillion, or looked at it in total federal spending to drop the federal spending from $7 trillion to $6 trillion. So sort of at a high level, you should think of this as we want to reduce the spending by eliminating waste and fraud, reduce the spending by 15%, which seems really quite achievable. The government is not efficient, and there's a lot of waste and fraud. So we feel confident that a 15% reduction can be done without affecting any of the critical government services. The sheer amount of waste and fraud in the government, it is astonishing. It's mind-blowing. We routinely encounter wastes of $1 billion or more, casually. For example, like the simple survey that was literally a 10-question survey that you could do with SurveyMonkey, cost you about $10,000. Was the government was being charged almost $1 billion for that.
For just the survey?
$1 billion for a simple online survey. Do you like the national park? And then there appeared to be no feedback loop for what would be done with that survey. So the survey would just go into nothing. It was like insane.
I find it so funny that Elon Musk just says at the end, it's insane, because I find myself using that verbiage so often, saying things are crazy or insane, and the people that support it, crazy and insane. And the left fits that to a T regularly. And it's almost like it's their mission to be as crazy as possible, to come up with the most lunatic type viewpoints they ever could have. So in that light, there's a Fox News report on one of these office buildings. Now, it's part of this discovery of waste, fraud, and abuse that Doge has uncovered is a lot of office buildings that are being paid for, either leased or owned by the federal government, and they're basically empty. And this is a report of just one of those that is wasting millions of taxpayer dollars.
Knock, knock, nobody's home. Look at this. Got this big, beautiful area where employees are supposed to work. Nobody's here. So we're in the second headquarters at Freddie Mac. We were just in the other building. There was nobody there for miles and miles and miles. Look at these desks. They're clean. We've got a cafeteria, again, that's completely vacant. You've got food that's being prepared. The staff that makes the food is here 5 days a week, but the people who work in this building or should work in this building aren't here 5 days a week. 2,900 people that were supposed to work in the building. Turns out only 49 were showing up full time on a 5 day.
No, slow it down. 2,900 people. How many showed up?
On average, the highest that we saw on a 5 day work week was 49 people. Spending on that one building, just to point this out, $57 million a year.
And your lease payments?
in lease payments.
$57 million on one empty building, or it's not officially empty because 49 people show up to work sometimes. But out of what do you say, 2,500, 2,900 that are supposed to be there? Come on. This is exactly what is being talked about when they're doing layoffs, because these people are not reporting to work. This is what, Elon Musk and Doge are basically working on when they're sending out or asking employees to send in the 5 things they did last week. 5 things. And they're not even like really vetting these too much. I mean, you could make up anything and just put it in there. You could put in the same thing every week and it probably wouldn't even go noticed. It's just that you're sending an email and replying to what you did last week. And this is why things are the way they are. And it's kind of crazy. Like I keep using that word, but it is crazy. And this is the fraud, waste, and abuse that needs to be found out. So in our last story, we've got to talk about this NPR hearing on the Hill. So the head of NPR is being questioned, and she's, I don't know. This Catherine Mayer, yeah, that's right. She is the CEO of NPR, and she said some pretty crazy things, and we've got a clip of that coming up. But I mean, she's almost reversing on everything here. And some of the things that she said that she believed, she changed in the last, she said half a decade at one point, which is 5 years, but it was actually tweeted out in 2022. So it's not even 5 years, and she's completely done a 180. Now, I get it. We love when people have their eye-opening, awakening moment, and these lefties all of a sudden realize that everything they've believed is completely false. However, I do not believe that she is one of these. She still does not see the bias of her organization, which is just mind-blowing because it's so obvious. And these congressmen make it painfully obvious to the public, if anybody was paying attention to this hearing, that NPR is just a government-funded propagandist organization. So here's some of that.
You're a rabid progressive. And do you not think it's a problem that your political leanings make it seem to the American people that you're not biased and that you're not doing your job? Because you agree that your job is to have journalistic integrity, right?
Absolutely, but there is a strong firewall between the newsroom and anything that I
Let's
do.
talk about the newsroom. You have 87 registered Democrats, not a single Republican in your editor board. So, I mean, how does that work to give us the perception that you're doing your job of actually delivering unbiased information?
Well, I would agree with you that that number is a concern if it is accurate. I do believe that we need to have journalists who represent the full breadth of the American society so that we can report well for all Americans.
Well, I think that you are failing. I realize you've only been there for a year, but I just really think that while it is a small portion of your budget, you very much should expect to restructure your revenue streams, because I don't think that NPR is necessarily worth saving.
He makes some good points there about the fact that NPR definitely needs to be defunded by the federal government. There at least needs to be a restructuring of how taxpayers' dollars goes to this propagandist organization. She really doesn't accept the fact that she has a biased company, and she even claims to not know that all of her editors are Democrats. Like, come on, we know people. Now, I know there's a lot of people who listen to NPR, and some of those numbers come up in some of these interviews. However, these people do not accept the fact that NPR is biased in their reporting. It's kind of funny because I always say, like, I listen to conservative media, but I know that it's conservative media. I know that there's a conservative slant, and I admit the bias of conservatism, but I know that slant is there. And so therefore I can weed it out and, find the truth. Now, granted, conservative media tends to look more at truth more than trying to work people up into an emotional frenzy like the leftist ones do. But I know how to weed through that information, and I accept that fact. People who listen to NPR, people even who watch and listen to CNN, MSNBC, most of them will not admit that there is a left-leaning bias, to say the least, and they think that everything is just truth that those organizations put out. And I do not think that that is a very honest way of looking at these sources of information, propaganda, we should really call it. And so that is very, very telling. Now, here they point out some of the things that she said about Donald Trump in tweets she'd made that are very, very pointed and, partisan, to say the least.
Failed to do that. Let me ask you, why did you call President Trump a fascist and a deranged racist sociopath in 2020?
Congressman, I appreciate the opportunity to address this. I regret those tweets. I would not tweet them again today. They represented a time where I was reflecting on something that I believe that the president had said rather than who he is. I don't presume that anyone is a racist.
You don't believe anyone is a racist?
I don't start by presuming anyone is a racist.
And that is quite the change from things that she said in the past. I mean, to not presume anybody's a racist. Now, first of all, that goes against a key tenet of the left, where anybody with power, any white male especially, would be presumed to be a racist. And so is she really stepping out against that? I don't believe that. I don't think she believes that. I think she's just trying to skate through this hearing. And to prove that, here is something that she said. It looks like kind of a TED Talk, anyways, where she says that truth is a distraction from getting things done. That truth should not be the main thing that we go after. And if you're running a nationally funded news, quote unquote, news organization, I think that probably truth should be your mission.
But one of the most significant differences, critical for moving from polarization to productivity, is that the Wikipedians who write these articles aren't actually focused on finding the truth. They're working for something that's a little bit more attainable, which is the best of what we can know right now. And after 7 years there, I actually believe that they're onto something. That for our most tricky disagreements, seeking the truth and seeking to convince others of the truth isn't necessarily the best place to start. In fact, I think our reverence for the truth might have become a bit of a distraction that is preventing us from finding consensus and getting important things done.
Clearly no bias there, for sure. And that's the exact type of person that I would want working for a news agency funded by the government, by the taxpayers, supposed to be nonpartisan, non-biased source of information, portraying themselves as non-biased, nonpartisan source of information. And I'm not really buying it. This last set of questioning really puts a pin into the biases that she's showed up to work with. The person running this government-funded, taxpayer-funded news, in quotes, organization. These are the thoughts that she's had not that long ago, and she doesn't even remember having them. It's like she hit her head or something.
It's interesting because a lot of your thinking, as expressed by your public statements, is deeply infused with economic and cultural Marxism. Do you believe that America is addicted to white supremacy?
I believe that I tweeted that, and as I've said earlier, I believe much of my thinking has evolved over the last half decade.
It has evolved. Why did you tweet that?
I don't recall the exact context, sir, so I wouldn't be able to say.
Okay. Do you believe that America believes in black plunder and white democracy?
I don't believe that, sir.
You tweeted that in reference to a book you were reading at the time, apparently, The Case for Reparations.
I don't think I've ever read that book, sir.
You tweeted about it. You said you took a day off to fully read The Case for Reparations. You put that on Twitter in January of 2020.
Apologies, I don't recall that I did.
Okay.
I'd no doubt that your tweet there is correct, but I don't recall that.
Okay. Do you believe that white people inherently feel superior to other races?
I do not.
You don't? You tweeted something to that effect. You said, I grew up feeling superior. Ha, how white of me. Why did you tweet that?
I think I was probably reflecting on what it was to grow up in an environment where I had lots of advantages.
It sounds like you're saying that white people feel superior.
I don't believe that anybody feels that way, sir. I was just reflecting on my own experiences.
Do you think that white people should pay reparations?
I've never said that, sir.
Yes, you did. You said it in January of 2020. You tweeted, Yes, the North. Yes, all of us. Yes, America. Yes, our original collective sin and unpaid debt. Yes, reparations. Yes, on this day.
I don't believe that was a reference to fiscal reparations, sir.
What kind of reparations was it a reference to?
I think it was just a reference to the idea that we all owe much to the people who came before us.
That's a bizarre way to frame what you tweeted. Okay, how much reparations have you personally paid?
Sir, I don't believe that I've ever paid reparations.
Okay, it's just for everybody else.
I'm not asking anyone
Seems
to pay
to be what you're
reparations, sir.
suggesting. Do you believe that looting is morally wrong?
I believe that looting is illegal, and I refer to it as counterproductive. I think it should be prosecuted.
Do you believe it's morally wrong, though?
Of course.
Of course. Then why did you refer to it as counterproductive? It's a very different way to describe it.
It is both morally wrong and counterproductive, as well as being
You
illegal.
tweeted, it's hard to be mad about protests in reference to the BLM protests, not prioritizing the private property of a system of oppression. You didn't condemn the looting. You said that it was counterproductive. NPR also promoted a book called In Defense of Looting. Do you think that that's an appropriate use of taxpayer dollars?
I'm unfamiliar with that book, sir, and I don't believe that was at my time
You
at
tweeted
NPR.
that you read that book, but
I don't believe that I did read that book, sir.
do you think that a few years ago NPR educated America about, quote, the whole community of genderqueer dinosaur enthusiasts? Do you think that that's an appropriate use of tax dollars?
I was not at NPR at the time, sir.
That's not the question, though. Do you think that that's an appropriate use of our tax dollars?
I think our tax dollars that we use are to be able to provide a wide range of
I'll take that as a yes. You do believe that that's appropriate. Your health advisor at NPR also stated in an interview that, quote, fear of fatness is more harmful than actual fat. Would you like to explain how fear of fatness is more harmful than actual fat? That's an editorial at NPR.
I am not familiar with the editorial, and I don't believe that was published during my time here.
It's called Diet Culture is Everywhere. Here's how to fight it. Do you think that that's an appropriate use of taxpayer dollars?
I think any reporting on health is an appropriate use of taxpayer dollars, yes.
And you think that editorializing that fat is not unhealthy is appropriate?
I don't know what that article is, sir, and I'm not familiar with it, so I
This
couldn't
is
say.
fake news. Do you think that basic accommodations like doorways or seat belts represent, quote, latent fat phobia?
I don't have an opinion.
It's
on that,
also
sir.
from NPR. Do you think civility is racist?
No, sir.
No. Well, your outlet ran an article entitled, quote, when civility is used as a cudgel against people of color. That was on All Things Considered. Would you like to explain?
I'm not on the editorial side, sir. I'm not familiar with that story.
You talk about how NPR is news. This is editorialization, and I'll read it. For many people of color in the United States, civility isn't so much social lubricant as it is a vehicle for containing them, preventing social mobility, and preserving the status quo. This is garbage. I'll spend all of my time doing everything I can to ensure you guys never get another dollar of taxpayer funding. This is complete garbage. Thank you, Madam Chair.
So Mr. Gill absolutely wrecks NPR. Now, not all of that was under Catherine's time as CEO with NPR, but the fact that she's not even willing to condemn any of these crazy articles, she's not even going to give an opinion on some of this stuff, like civility is racist and doorways and seatbelts contribute to fat phobia. The fact that being fat is not unhealthy, which is a crazy trend. One of the things that's led us to complete distrust in the health institutions of America, besides the whole COVID thing, and transgenderism, which is another lunatic idea. But, the fact that she's not willing to commit an opinion on some of this stuff just shows it. Now, on one hand, I would say, it shows that she's willing to be unopinionated about things that she should be, showing both sides of the argument on. The problem is there is no other side. There is no article saying that fat phobia or talking about fat phobia is more dangerous than being fat. Switch that around. Being fat is more dangerous than fat phobia. There's no article like that. There's no article saying that the violence in the streets of major cities is actually racist or contributing to racism. There's nothing like that. There's no article saying the Democratic Party is racist, which is actually more of a true statement. There's no article like that. So she can't even claim that NPR is showing both sides of the spectrum here, that she is trying to be unbiased in her opinion on these issues. She can try to claim it, but it's clearly not true. Anyways, that's all we got for today. That's all we have for today, rather. Thanks for joining for another episode. This is your host, Mark the Spark, and that was some of this week's news. Don't forget to go out and volunteer for something meaningful and spark the conversation. Don't forget to like, subscribe, comment below, share with a friend. Have a good week.